Africa is often described as poor, but that label hides a far more complex reality. In truth, Africa is one of the most resource-rich continents on the entire planet. Beneath its soil lies an extraordinary concentration of minerals critical to the modern economy. These resources quietly power the technologies that define daily life across the developed world. Yet economically, much of Africa remains locked in cycles of extraction and dependency. This contradiction did not emerge by accident or through historical randomness. It is the product of global economic systems designed largely outside African borders. African land holds the foundation of today's technological and industrial infrastructure. Cobalt, lithium, rare earths, copper, and nickel exist in massive and valuable quantities. These materials are essential for electric vehicles, smartphones, and renewable energy systems. They also power artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and the expansion of global data centers. Without African minerals, modern technological growth would slow dramatically across multiple industries. Entire supply chains would struggle to operate at their current scale and speed. Yet the countries extracting these materials rarely control their long-term economic outcomes. Most African nations remain positioned at the lowest levels of global value chains. Raw materials leave the continent with minimal processing or industrial transformation. The most profitable stages of production occur thousands of miles away from the mines. This imbalance defines Africa's role in the global economy today. For generations, African resources fueled industrial expansion across Europe, Asia, and North America. First through gold, diamonds, and agricultural commodities traded during colonial eras. Later through oil, natural gas, and industrial metals supporting 20th century manufacturing. Today, global demand has shifted again toward a new strategic focus. This time, the priority is technology, electrification, and the energy transition. Electric vehicles, battery storage, and renewable grids reshaped global economic planning. Suddenly, minerals once considered obscure became strategically indispensable. Governments and multinational corporations began paying far closer attention to Africa. The global race for critical minerals accelerated faster than most analysts predicted. Africa found itself at the center of a new geopolitical scramble. Cobalt provides one of the clearest examples of this growing global dependence. More than 70% of the world's cobalt originates from a single country. That country is the Democratic Republic of Congo, central to battery supply chains worldwide. Without Congolese cobalt, global battery production would face immediate disruption. Electric vehicle manufacturing would slow or collapse across major markets. Climate targets and clean energy timelines would become increasingly unrealistic. Yet most Congolese cobalt leaves Africa in an unrefined and low-value state. Only a small fraction is processed locally before being shipped abroad. The highest value stages of the supply chain occur elsewhere in the world. This dynamic is widely known as the resource paradox. Africa exports raw wealth while importing finished technological products. The imbalance widens at every step up the value chain. Profits accumulate where processing capacity and advanced technologies are concentrated. Power follows control over processing, not extraction alone. This principle defines modern resource geopolitics. For decades, Africa has remained structurally disadvantaged within this system. In recent years, however, the balance began to shift quietly. A new global actor entered the continent with long-term strategic intent. This entry was calculated, patient, and focused on future leverage. That actor was China, operating primarily through economic influence. China did not arrive through military occupation or political domination. It arrived with financing, construction firms, and infrastructure development projects. Roads, railways, ports, and power plants expanded rapidly across multiple regions. In exchange, long-term access to critical mineral resources was secured. On paper, these agreements appeared mutually beneficial to all involved parties. In practice, they reshaped global mineral and energy supply chains. Chinese firms gained influence over extraction operations across the continent. More importantly, they gained dominance over mineral refining and processing capacity. Processing is where pricing power and long-term leverage truly reside. Whoever controls refining controls supply stability and market access. Supply stability translates directly into geopolitical and economic influence. This shift quietly altered the global balance of industrial power. At the same time, many Western nations reduced their engagement in Africa. Investments slowed as strategic priorities shifted toward other regions. This withdrawal created an economic and political vacuum. China moved decisively to occupy that space. Over time, dependency deepened without open confrontation or conflict. This system does not resemble traditional colonialism in appearance. There are no foreign flags, governors, or occupying armies on the ground. Instead, influence flows through contracts, loans, and long-term agreements. Infrastructure projects are often financed through debt tied to resource exports. When commodity prices fall, repayment pressure increases rapidly. Leverage then shifts quietly toward creditors and financial stakeholders. Debt becomes a silent but powerful geopolitical instrument. Renegotiation processes typically favor the stronger negotiating position. Environmental costs add another layer of strain to local communities. Mining operations damage ecosystems and contaminate critical water sources. These environmental consequences remain largely invisible to global consumers. Labor conditions reveal another uncomfortable dimension of mineral extraction. Many miners work in dangerous, informal, and poorly regulated environments. Safety standards are often weak or inconsistently enforced. In some regions, child labor continues to exist within supply chains. This human cost underpins a trillion-dollar global clean energy transition. The green energy narrative rarely includes these underlying realities. The true costs remain distant from end users and investors. As demand accelerates, pressure on African producers will intensify further. Between now and 2030, global mineral demand is expected to surge. Electric vehicles, artificial intelligence, and energy storage will drive exponential growth. Africa's resources will become increasingly strategic to the global economy. With that importance comes a growing opportunity for bargaining power. Some governments are beginning to recognize this shifting dynamic. Royalties are rising and extraction contracts are being reassessed. Local processing requirements are entering national economic policy debates. Resource nationalism is slowly returning across parts of the continent. Regional cooperation among producers is also gaining momentum. Shared infrastructure could significantly strengthen negotiating leverage. However, the risks remain serious and unavoidable. Capital flight and political instability remain constant structural threats. Africa now stands at a historic economic and geopolitical crossroads. One path leads to deeper extraction and long-term dependency. The other leads to leverage, industrialization, and economic sovereignty. The race to determine which path prevails is already underway.